And I'm proud to be an American. Well, at least I know I'm free. And I won't forget the men who died, who gave that right to me. And I'm proud to stand up next to you and defend her still today. 'Cause there ain't no doubt I love this land. God bless the USA. Happy 4th, everybody! Yeah! Yeah! I really am getting fat, though. I took my weight. 206. What? When did that happen? Last time I took my weight, I was like 185. I hope everybody's up in a good one. Stay safe out there. You gotta hear it twice. You've heard it all your life, but stay safe out there. Alligator Alcatraz flooded, as many of you know. It's only been a few days and the entire camp is ankle deep in water, like at the bare minimum. Because the hubris of building a concentration camp in the Everglades to jack psychopaths off about feeding migrants to gators, it's just that. It's hubris. That's so funny. DeSantis is so desperate for red meat that he fumbles it again. God, man. God really hates Italians. I'm not serious. However, I was amused by that for a short amount of time, and then I figured out I foresee that just being an excuse to up the amount of water they're draining out of Florida, not just around there, but everywhere, which has already been happening. Mind you, this is the exact thing Newsom did, DeSantis' twin brother that got all the oxygenated blood, to prime California for massive fires. Newsom and Vegas allowed the Saudis to drain Lake Mead dry. And they sold off a lot of their water reserves. And then, whoop, all gone. Whoopsie. There you go. Same exact thing's happening in Florida. Watch, it's coming. It's coming. Regardless of if DeSantis stays or goes, terrible things are coming because of the decisions that he's making. Saudi Arabia, Israel, it's literally like the same thing. The Bin Salman family is actually Phoenician descendants. It's sad. But, like, that entire strip of, like, the Bahrain strip, you know what I'm saying? That entire strip of eastern, central Saudi Arabia, above Oman Muscat, and below Kuwait. That entire strip was a big Phoenician colony back in the day. And the Bin Salman family is descendant, very likely, of the, like, literally demon-obsessed son of the great King David, Solomon. Ugh. It is what it is, It would be super funny if the 2028 race ended up being DeSantis versus Newsom. That's an even 50-50 split right there. That's an even 50-50 chance. Kalshi, Poly Market, they'd all have a field day with that. Because they don't make a lot of money off of, like, 2070s, But they make a lot of money out of 50-50s. And the scummy stuff that Newsom has done, but how much he's beloved for like the insulated, sheltered parts of the liberals compared to DeSantis and the exact same phenomenon with the insulated, sheltered part of the Republicans. I wouldn't even call them conservatives. And in fact, I wouldn't even call a lot of the Democrats liberals. And in fact, I just learned the definition of a neocon. Apparently, a neocon is somebody that used to have, like, Trotskyite beliefs and then converted to republicanism when the Soviet Union collapsed. Very funny stuff. Very interesting stuff. Apparently, its home is, like, Brooklyn. And that's exactly why Trump has been, like, radiated with so much nonsense. And he is so tired of it. Of course they don't know what they're doing. They're freaks. They're completely off base. They've been told that they're perfect because of their race from a young age. Whether you're black, white, Arab, or Israeli, it doesn't matter. That's really, really bad for growing and becoming a better person. I'm sorry if I'm a little bit too loud. I apologize. I don't try to peek my microphone. It is what it is, you know. I work with the tools that I got. I hope, like, people listen to gritty, grainy, you know, stuff from way back in the day, and it's about the message, it's about the information that they can gather, so I hope it doesn't turn too many people off. I know my audio quality isn't crisp and clear and clean, and, you know, but I don't try to roll a falsetto the entire time. You know, I try to ride the waves of enthusiasm through my voice and just flex those muscles in practice. What's called a falsetto is the opposite of a falsetto. You know, when somebody talks like this, that's a falsetto. Elon Musk's child that transitioned is falsetto, like really noticeably falsetto. That long-haired guy, Maldavius Fig Tree? What the hell? That guy. Falsetto. He talks in a falsetto voice all the time. In fact, it was the voice actor, Bren Daniel, that taught me that term because his voice is naturally super low because your shape of your hips determines the tenor of your voice overall, although you can train it over time, just as you can train your facial muscles with mewing, which isn't based on like some weird internet slang, but is actually named after a guy named John Mew, who just recently passed away, who is like a 70s orthopedic sort of, you know, kind of on the fringe a little bit. But honestly, I think some of those techniques do work. You know, it's all about practicing and training the muscles so that you have better control in the areas that you use anyway, instead of neglecting them and then resigning yourself to your fate where you're at right now. It's never a good thing to do for your growth. So, I simply must note that the soy fiend, Benny Johnson, he used to work for BuzzFeed before he became, like, childish, rank, infantile propagandist. His soul was already sold, so... And it's one of those, like, apparently a lot of the neoconservatives are Jewish, you know, going back to the whole Brooklyn connection, going back to the whole Trotskyite connection. Christians don't abide by communism. Straight up. They can tolerate it if it's overwhelming their area, but they will keep the faith. They will not be true believers. Whereas a lot of Jewish people ended up being the fiscal benefactors of communism in the long run, specifically because they could always hide their religion, and that's that. They don't care about, you know, the old faith of you're gonna pray regardless. They don't care. A lot of them are atheists, and they believe that the only way that countries are born is through massive bloodshed. That is the USSR. So, that is what it is. Republicanism itself is kind of tainted, although it has its good parts, and I'm not talking about the Republican Party, but no, there's a little history there. The only party that America used to have was called the Democratic Republican Party. You know, so we were originally a DPR. So, yeah. Freemasonic founders, genius legal minds, but a lot of aquiline noses in some of those early portraits. Up to you to decide. I think that our country is beautiful and wonderful, and America is overwhelmingly good. You know, when the Statue of Liberty, it's engraved with "Give us your huddled masses." It means give us the wealth of the world, actually. The meek things of this earth will be the inheritors of it. And ultimately, as we've gained this weird... As we have defeated what people call Vietnam Syndrome, which is the horror and disgust of engaging in an offensive war against the civilian population. As we defeated that in the 90s, we have become weaker and weaker and weaker and weaker and weaker and weaker. And Vietnam made us tremendously weaker as well. It isn't like fighting the Nazis where we're fighting for something. Fighting against genuine malice and evil and hatred and destruction. It is what it is, you know. I think many people are on the cusp of waking up, and many people are waking up, and many people have woken up in the last couple of years. And it all has to do with the fact that there's a lot of planetary alignments. There's an extreme amount of solar activity based on the solar cycles, beaming into the Earth, causing volcanoes, causing massive amounts of northern lights all the way down to like near the equator almost, although not quite. And that is showing to the people who do not believe things like internal faith, esoteric faith, people with exoteric faith, materialist faith, as in God's blessing is shekel. Those people look to the planetary alignments and Saturn and all that stuff, and they think, now's the time. But I think all the billions and billions and billions of prayers have performed like a protective shield around the collective unconscious. And that, though it's been worn down significantly, that has protected our human race from being so demonically possessed as a whole, from human sacrifice, child sacrifice, horrific behavior, destruction of families, drugs everywhere, sex being sold on corners through pimpery, and human trafficking, prostitution, child sex slavery. Horrible, horrible things that would have, caused a Sodom and Gomorrah type event in the past. There is still many, many people praying their rosary for the world to be healed, and that's performing a protective shield around all humanity, I believe. I do believe that. I genuinely do believe that. Call me schizophrenic if you want, but I do not subscribe to your Freudian BS, and you know what? Neither does our country. And most of the world are going to shake off of that anyway, so. Bye-bye, proto-Zionist ideology. Now let's see what the Zionists can do now that they've been exposed. It's incredibly important to remark that when people don't apply the same criteria for rights to humans that they do for cute, fluffy, chonker, pupper, Bort, Keanu, Chungus 100 doggos, when they enjoy the level of torture they would recoil from if it was inflicted on an animal in humans, they are a sociopath. And vice versa, actually. So, say you care a lot about humans and you can empathize very well with humans, but you're okay with animal torture. You are a sociopath. Because you have a level of respect, it's just not applied across the board. Because it is, it's based on, like socializing. You have socialized with your pet, so you empathize with your pet. Or you don't like animals, like say you were assaulted by a monkey when you were younger or something because you live in Indonesia or Malaysia, and then you only are socialized by humanity and not animals. That's how you get that. Psychopathy, on the other hand, that's like a more advanced version of that, where your entire psyche is occluded from things like empathy. And, although a lot of autistic people have problems with empathy, psychopaths legitimately do lack human emotions. And autistic people lack, in many cases, empathy towards other human beings. That doesn't mean that they hate other human beings, though they can get frustrated and lash out sometimes. And that is unfortunate. I think animals and humans both have the right to an unmolested, peaceful life if they're not touching anybody else. But you see this genocidal rhetoric that's baking people into this. And we're going to get into a little bit about how this can happen in this episode. This is going to be a very, psyche-focused episode. I'm not going to be talking about how Nola's a pedophile and likes to watch, anime child porn on this episode as much. Because it's funny that right as I started talking about that, bunch of people online, I think it's just the general vibe of the air. People can feel these things in the collective unconscious. And when Noel went overboard with his Zionist crap, because he genuinely thought that it's in the bag for Netanyahu, he exposed himself to large groups of people, and that opened up opportunity for the people that already hated him. Not me. If you go back just 30 episodes ago, 40 episodes ago, I'm struggling with it. It's up and down, but I want the best for him. Now I want his public-facing life to be completely and utterly destroyed, casted to the winds, and for him to never be seen again. I do not care if he kills himself. I do not care what happens to him. I do not care if he has 100 kids and has a great time over in his compound. I do not care if he drinks himself to death, lonely and afraid. I do not care about his public life. I do not care about him. But I will absolutely put every single ounce of effort that I physically can, physically, spiritually, mentally, into destroying his public-facing life. Okay. I can't possibly grasp the place people have to be to get off on suffering. I've never in my life been anywhere close to that point, I don't think. It looks very dark and cold, and frankly, it looks terrifying to be in that place. I'm not terrified of those people. I'm not terrified. I'm not scared. And that's because I am the way that I am. And I know the contrast, the juxtaposition, the contrast between my personality and that type of personality. I can only imagine that I have been scared before in my past. I've overcome it. I know the proper method to overcome fear. And they have indulged themselves in their fear, shot through to the very core of their being, down to their soul. And this is a big root of this. And we're going to get a little bit more into it as the episode goes on. So stay tuned. And the childish Andrew Tate rhetoric about manliness, you know, the stuff that appeals to literal grade schoolers, it seems like a chintzy substitute for inner peace. I can see the same exact mindset that the far left had when they were castrating children, that the far right is building more and more, always nascent in all human beings because it's not an individual thing, it's an archetypal thing. In regards to literal communist-like Gestapos running around, separating families, throwing people in camps, disappearing children. And there's a lot to study in this sickness right now. ICE gets caught doing something evil, comment section is full of whataboutism. Fascinating stuff. There's a lot to learn right now. There's a lot to learn. If you've ever wondered how the communists, or the Nazis, could have abided by such atrocities that they committed, or inside of their communities, inside of their country, look no further than the moment we're in right now. And be sure to familiarize yourself with the horseshoe theory. Very important. Very important. Don't get it twisted, though. This is significantly gayer and more retarded than it was back then, for sure. For sure. That is itself the main reason why a lot of these neo-Nazis love Hitler so much, is because it's similar. What they're doing is programmed by the same people that programmed the entire Weimar project, but they are significantly more stupid and significantly more homosexual than people were back then. And that's one of the reasons why there's so much veneration for it, because there is a big contrast there. Hell, there's a clear and distinct reason why the word retarded is in peak form right now. 10 years ago, degeneracy was the spotlight word. But the shifting of the tides has revealed a cave of disgusting, ugly fishmen that we can see clearly now. I'm joking about rape, joking about genocide. Fascinating stuff from a psychological perspective, but not something that you want to see anywhere, really, especially in your country. The thing about the internet is you never really know if somebody is like India, Israel, or if they're, you know, literally in your neighborhood. You never know. Although I'm pretty sure that most of the people in my neighborhood, vast majority, if not all the people in my neighborhood, are good people. Even the guy I threw piss on, I think he's relatively chill, and he hasn't been deliberately annoying since that moment. And like, he was being very annoying leading up to that moment. Oh well, it's okay. I forgive him. Observing evil people with patience and calmness is actually it's actually really good for the psyche. The wise man learns from both the foolish and the wise, and over time you can see the archetypes of demonic possession through the identities of individuals. I think this is how the great prophets inspired billions to see clearer. Yes. All of the people that you can consider a great prophet, all the people that you can consider lifted a population up from where they were previously. Oh, by the way, one of the reasons why Islam is so, like, patriarchal is because, like, the pre-Islamic desert religions were, like, very matriarchal. Very, very matriarchal. You feel free to study that if you'd like. So it's kind of a pendulum swing, really. I don't think it's balanced. Another word of advice, when you're dealing with large groups of people, archetype is the lens to use. It's incredibly important. You know, a lot of painting is the continual dance of making mistakes while in the process of working through mistakes by filling in the depth. And the more mistakes you make, the more opportunity you have to dance. Life is kind of like that. If you just have to allow life to imitate art. and raise your consciousness above what's just directly in front of you or what you can do in the next few minutes. Think of the bigger picture. I don't think it's any random coincidence that all great societies loved art of all kinds. Architecture to music and everything in between. But I hate to say it, Bob Ross would be very disappointed with us right now. Master Sergeant Bob Ross. But I'm sure he's the sort of person to be praying for us down here and for all souls in purgatory from his position in heaven. He was a wonderful, wonderful man. He was a good, kind, and holy man. And sometimes I ponder on the permanence of hell. Hell is often described as a place where prayer can't reach. The living and the triumphant, that is, those in heaven, can pray for those on earth and those in purgatory, but we can't pray for those in hell, even if we try. But is hell just a deeper form of purgatory? Could they be released in time? I don't know the answer to these questions. These are supernatural questions, my friends. I'll tell you one thing for certain, though. The communists got what they wanted. Straight up. We have gulags, and people are starving while our military involves itself with the entire world's realpolitik. Congratulations, guys. You got what you wanted. You got what you asked for, verbatim. I've said for a while now that when I've said this for years and years and years, that when the Soviet Union died, the hungry ghosts that plagued its population flooded into America. It's likely that the financial and political leaders who created the Soviet Onion managed, through the Clinton administration's deep connection to Mossad and Jeffrey Epstein, that bridge over to us. And it's not up to Ukrainians or Russians. No, 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 no. Usually the thought leaders aren't either race, if you really want to know the truth about it. There is also precedence for this happening before. There's a paper trail from Operation Paperclip when Nazi Germany was collapsing and we were absorbing their thought leaders. Mind you, Nazi Germany started collapsing in like 1942 or earlier, not 1945. DeSantis would be completely and utterly servile towards Israel's whim if he was president right now. And I voted for Trump exclusively because I looked hard and long at his foreign policy during his first term and determined he would be significantly better than anybody else running. Kamala and her Jewish first husband, they would have rolled over and showed their bellies at the first sign of tension on essentially all issues. I truly do believe that. You know, there's a handful of minor issues that they may have been able to do lip service for, maybe make a little bit better, but the grand scheme of things, Trump is better on the foreign stage. And I've said for a very, very long time, at least 3 years now, that the evil empire, as it starts to wane in strength, will start to contract, and chickens will come home to roost. It's what's going to happen. It's a good sign. It's a sign of healing. We cannot get scared and try to outsource all that pain. We have to deal with what we have generated. We have to deal with it. We're the only people that can. Trump has businesses and friends in almost every country, and that is a saving grace for the world. I've said it before, and I've said it again. The evil empire, it has to contract before it is extinguished. And I'm not saying that the empire itself needs to be extinguished, but the evil empire has to die. Because guess what? When you make a cake, big, beautiful, delicious cake, and put a single drop of poison in there, it's no longer a cake. It's poison. You have to throw it all out and start from scratch. That doesn't mean that you lose what you've learned. It doesn't mean that you give up all your resources, but it would be wise to get rid of all the poison. It'd be wise. We actually got to see with crystal clear view recently as the International Zionist Politburo stoked the flames of revolution by playing on the liberal sensibilities of the elite city-dwelling Iranians. A stark minority with a huge megaphone, similar to the situation in the 70s that only lasted for about a decade. We saw Zionists all over the world beg and plead and pray that the leftists in Iran would do a revolution. And we must learn exactly where these far-left revolutions come from worldwide. We must examine the ones using this as a casus belli to act even more destructive and evil than them on the right, and try to use logic and historical context to reason with and pull people together from these easily groomed extremities back to being Americans and caring about their entire country, while permanently abandoning thought leaders that have pushed us to this position. Did you know the word for all of you in Monks, the insular Celtic language of the Isle of Man in between Ireland and England, is pronounced Sonichu? Phonetically, sunny dew or sunny dew. The more you know. That's phonetic. It's literally pronounced Sonichu. All of you, Sonichu. The more you know. God, do I miss the old culture. Oh, well. It was beautiful while it lasted. Everybody has a good one. Enjoys the rest of their 4th of July. Don't drink too much alcohol now. Cheers.